السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما نافعا. آمين. Alhamdulillah, we are discussing about another very important component of Islamic worldview, which is ethics. We were talking about uh, the concept of meta-ethics, understanding the moral philosophy. And we said that in Islamic legacy, we don't have a lot of works dedicated to explaining the moral philosophy, because whole religion is about morality. Al-Akhlaq, when used in a comprehensive meaning, comprises whole religion of Islam. And the literature which was produced about different moral realities like az-zuhud, al-adab, and other fields of knowledge in Islam, they are all manifestations and different aspects of akhlaq. So we don't have a lot of original works dedicated to explaining the moral philosophy. However, all these fields of knowledge can be incorporated into explaining the ethics. In spite of that, we do have some scholars who wrote about meta-ethics, explaining the moral philosophy. And from the early scholars who dedicated themselves to explaining this field, we can give two examples from them. The first is al-Imam Ibn Miskawayh. He is from the eastern part of the Muslim world. He died in 421 after Hijrah. So he lived in 4th and 5th century after Hijrah. His work, Tahdhi al-Akhlaq wa Tathhir al-Araq, is one of the original works, early original works about akhlaq. And he compiled other works also, but this is the main one. So he wrote, for example, Taharatun Nafs, Tartibu Sa'adat, the order of tranquility, happiness. This is one example. Another example is the court physician who worked with the Abbasid Khulafa. He was the personal physician of 3 Abbasid Khulafa, al-Muqtadir, al-Qahir, and al-Radi. His name is Thabit ibn Sinan ibn Thabit ibn Qurrah. Thabit ibn Sinan. He died in 365 after Hijrah. So he's also an early scholar. In origin, he was a fire worshipper who served the Khulafa because of his expertise in medicine. He was a physician and a doctor. And he compiled a lot of works in medicine. Some of them have also reached us. But eventually, he accepted Islam. Thabit ibn Sinan, rahimahullah, he accepted Islam. And after accepting Islam, he continued on this path of scholarship. He compiled works. And in that, he wrote about akhlaq also. His work, Tahdhib al-Akhlaq, is also an original contribution to the field of Islamic morality, we can call it, or Islamic ethics. The manuscript which you see on your screen is the book of Thabit ibn Sinan, Tahdhib al-Akhlaq. According to my knowledge, it has not been published yet. We only have the manuscript. And in this work, he discusses morality in a very original and thought-provoking manner. And he combines between the early theories of morality, particularly the Greek, the opinions of the Greek philosophers, because he himself was a scholar of medicine, and before Islam, he was aware of the Greek legacy in the field of scholarship. So he incorporated his experience and knowledge in explaining akhlaq in this work. Inshallah, we will try to read some lines from this book, Tahdhib al-Akhlaq. You can see here, Tahdhib al-Akhlaq, Ta'lifu Thabit ibn Sinan. Thabit ibn Sinan, he died in 365 after Hijrah. And he was a court physician of the three Abbasid Khulafa. And while we read this, inshallah, we will explain and compare some important concepts which we want to understand in the discussion about ethics. Tahdhib al-Akhlaq by Thabit ibn Sinan, ibn Thabit ibn Qurra. He has divided this work into 7 chapters. And he begins with the definition of akhlaq, the meaning of akhlaq, to explaining the good and the evil akhlaq, and the difference between the good and the evil manners. The most prominent thing about this work is that he incorporated the field of medicine in understanding the akhlaq of a human being. And this is an original methodology of using a particular field of knowledge in explaining and understanding and explaining a different field. And if you remember, when we discussed in epistemology, that specialization is the product of Western modernity. Specialization in knowledge, as it is practiced now, is a new thing. The early fields of knowledge, or the early scholars, whether Muslims or non-Muslims, they never practiced specialization as it is practiced in the modern period after the Western Renaissance. So specialization has its goods and evils, benefits and harms. And before the modern period, the scholars would incorporate different fields of knowledge to nurture and develop new fields, or they would use a particular field in explaining a different field. If you remember, at that time when we discussed about this, we gave the example of, again, a great scientist and an expert in medical science, al-Imam Ibn Sina. We said in his book, Al-Qanun fi Tibb, the canon in medicine, which was used in Europe and West for many centuries, how he used astronomy in explaining some diseases and reaching the cure of some diseases. Otherwise, astronomy, what is happening in the heavenly realm, has nothing to do with the physical realities here on earth. But he used it. This was a very common practice. You can see it in this text also. And he says it in the beginning. He says that we can understand the akhlaq of a human being and the hierarchy, the classification, based on the physical qualities of a human being, based on the science of medicine. So in medicine, the classification of amrad, diseases, the types of diseases, the difference between siha and the difference between good health and sickness. All these realities can help us in understanding the akhlaq. And he takes it from the early Greek philosophers of the classical age in particular. We will come to that. Okay, so you can see here, al-Bab al-Thalith, studying a manuscript is not easy always. However, this is a good manuscript comparatively. Otherwise, we have manuscripts which are sometimes they're incomplete or damaged manuscripts. So this is a science in itself, reading and studying the manuscripts and publishing them, making them available to the people of this age. Alhamdulillah, every moment a new book from the Turath, a new work from the Islamic legacy is published. According to some statistics, what has been published or what is being published is only a drop from the ocean of the manuscript world. Okay, so you will see that the main sources of Islam are still in manuscript form. The greatest book of hadith, Musnad of Baqi ibn Mukhallad, is still a manuscript. It has not been published. Only one part has been published, which is in around 200, 300 pages, if I'm not mistaken. The greatest book of Sunnah by Imam Khalal, which is said to be in more than 200 volumes, has not been published yet. So on and so forth. So what has been published is a drop from the ocean. In Al-Bab al-Thalis, he says, في إحصاء أجناس وأنواع الرذائل التي هي أمراض النفس. Understanding that different types of رذائل, يعني evil morals, which are like diseases of the nafs. Like we have diseases of the body, these are diseases and sicknesses of the nafs. وذكر أسبابها وذكر أسبابها والآراض التابعة لها. And the mention and explaining their reasons and causes. ومثل ذلك في الحال التي بين الفضائل والرذائل هي النذير ما بين الصحة والمرض. And understanding the condition between fadail and radhail, between good manners and evil manners, is like, or it resembles the condition between good health and sickness, fil badan, in the body. See, he uses medical science in explaining these matters. I have marked some important points. Of course, we cannot read the whole text. We'll take these important points and explain. So after explaining the basic meaning of falsafa, he talks about philosophy, because ethics is the branch of philosophy. He talks about the meaning of falsafa and hikmah, and those who contributed to philosophy from the early Greek philosophers and others. He says about philosophy, فَلَمَّا طَالَتِ الْمُدَّةِ بِاسْتِعْمَالِ هَذِهِ اللَّفْظَةِ فِي مُخَاطَبَةِ مَنْ قَدْ بَرَزَ وَفَاقَ فِي سَائِرِ عُلُومِهِمْ دُونَ مَنْ تَفَرَّدَ بِإِلْمٍ مِنْهَا. He says this term philosopher eventually was culminated or used for the one who has expertise in all ulum. دُونَ مَنْ تَفَرَّدَ بِإِلْمٍ مِنْهَا. Not an expert in a particular field. So philosopher or polymath scholar was always used for a generalist, not a specialist. By generalist, we don't mean a scholar who has little knowledge of every field. By generalist, we mean a scholar who is a polymath, who is and who has encyclopedic knowledge of all fields. And he has the qudra, he has the capability of incorporating all these fields and knowledge and developing new fields or new knowledge from that, or using different fields or a particular field in explaining and understanding another field. This is the meaning. And if you remember, we talked in epistemology, we talked about how in the modern Western thought, we have this critique of specialization. I even recommended a book at that time, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialist World. I'm not mistaken about the title. So he says basically philosopher is a scholar who has command over sa'iri ulumihim, all ulum, all branches of philosophy. Now you can see how reductionist we have become in knowledge in our times. He talks about the branches of philosophy, like he discusses about logic as a very important branch of philosophy. Or is it the base or foundation of philosophy? Can we classify it as a branch or the very foundation of philosophy? We'll not go into that. This is not our topic. Then he says, after explaining the meaning of philosophy and the branches of philosophy, he says, the philosophers have divided philosophy ila juz'ain, into two types. الجزء النظري وهو العلم والجزء الخلقي وهو العمل. The first type is nadari, theoretical, which is knowledge and all masail related to knowledge. And the second type is practical, وهو العمل, practical philosophy. ورأوا, and their opinion was أنه لا يستحق أن يسمى الإنسان فيلسوفا دون أن يجمع العلم والعمل. That a person does not deserve the title of philosopher until he combines between knowledge and action, until he combines between theoretical and practical philosophy. So if a person only knows nadari, theoretical philosophy, and we don't see any practice in his life, we don't see the athar, the manifestation of his philosophy, of his belief in his practical life, he does not deserve to be called a philosopher. Now this is another important point here, because in our times knowledge has been reduced to only nadari. In practice, a human being is free. So freedom as a philosophy and a cosmetic and very reductionist understanding of knowledge is prevailing. This was not the case with even the early Western classical or classical legacy or the theories which prevailed in the Western antiquity. It was never the case. Then he says they divide the first type, an-nadhari, which is al-ilm, theoretical philosophy, into three types. And they divide ulum, ilm, knowledge, into three types. Ilahiyya, metaphysics; tabi'iyya, natural philosophy; and ta'limiyya or riyadiyya, the practical philosophy. And here ethics falls in this practice, because basically ethics is practical philosophy which is applied, yani understanding the value and virtue of particular actions. It is not only theoretical. This is what he wants to say here. And another point which he makes here is that all these fields are interconnected. Ilahiyya, tabi'iyya, and riyadiyya. Metaphysics, natural philosophy, or ethics, practical philosophy with all its sub-branches, they are interconnected. They benefit from each other. They are nurtured from each other. They are not disconnected. Okay. So he talks about the four components which are the foundation of tabi'ah, the nature, fire, air, water, and earth. The famous classification, how it is incorporated in understanding akhlaq also. And how does the nature around us affect our bodies, affect our akhlaq? And this was discussed by Ibn Khaldun also. If you remember, in Muqaddimah Ibn Khaldun, he talks about the effect of nature, the conditions in which we live, the quality of air, for example, how does it affect our body, and eventually what happens in our body, it affects our akhlaq. So akhlaq are not disconnected from the physical matters of the body. And then he talks about the body here. He says we have different fluids according to the medical science of their times. And many theories were changed, many things were developed more. But according to the advancement in the Greek times and the times of al-Imam Thabit ibn Sinan, he says we have different fluids. And good health basically depends on the balance, hitting the golden mean in these fluids. Okay, so we have the phalgum, which he calls balgam, al-balgam here, and we have the blood, we have these fluids which are in the body. Good health is about hitting the balance. And eventually, this idea of golden mean, balance, became the principle of akhlaq also, which is claimed that it is taken from Aristotle and the Greek philosophers. Golden mean. Akhlaq is not about destroying the qualities in our body. These qualities have been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Akhlaq, we can never kill them, we can never destroy them. So akhlaq is about creating a balance in these qualities. This idea of balance is taken, or golden mean, is taken from early medicine, both early medicine, and it was incorporated into ethics. So he talks about the tib, medicine here, and how do the experts of medical field, they analyze and understand the physical qualities of the body, how to achieve good health. Then he goes into more deeper matters, like, is there an intermediary state between good health and sickness? So health and sickness are very clear, but is there an intermediary state between good health and sickness? And then he incorporates this, he uses this in understanding ethics. Is there an intermediary state, condition between good akhlaq and bad akhlaq? He talks about that. Here, he, after explaining some aspect from medicine, he says, وَلِهَذَا أَتَيْنَا بِالْجُمَلِ الَّتِي مِنْ أَمْرِ الطِّبِّ وَالْمِثَالَاتِ الَّتِي ضَرَبْنَاهَا مِنْهُ. For this reason, we have incorporated some important basic principles and matters from medicine and examples from medicine. لِنَسْلُكَ إِلَى ذَلِكَ فِي مِثْلِ تِلْكَ. So that we can use them in that. We can use them in understanding ethics. في مثل تلك الطرق فإنها مثلها, because they resemble each other. ونذيرها سواء لا على جهة الحشو والفضول والتطويل والخروج عن غرض الكتاب. يعني this is not side notes or extra information which will take us out from the main topic of this book. And I have discussed medicine in this book. I have given examples from medicine, the reality of the human body, not to bore you, but it is the main crux of this book, because I have used the field of medicine in understanding ethics. Then he says, وَقَدْ ذَكَرَ جَالِنُوس في كتابه إن مثل ذلك بعينه فعل أفلاطون. يعني he quotes two important early Greek philosophers who were scientists and medical experts at the same time. Jalinus is Galen. You must have studied Galen in your school days. Galen, the famous physician, Greek physician of the classical age. And he says this method was taken from Aflatun himself. From Aflatun. From Plato. وأنه اكتفى فيما استخرجه من أمر النفس وتفلسف فيه. He, in his philosophy, what is the source of his philosophy and philosophical ideas? He took it from understanding the nafs, understanding the human condition, understanding the human psychology, we can say. We're not using the term soul because we don't know, did they believe in the soul or not? It is a different discussion. And he incorporated it, his understanding about the human psychology, he used it, and he turned it into a falsafa. And this is أثر بقراط فيما استخرجه من الطب. And this is basically the influence or the method of Buqrat also. Hippocrates. Hippocrates is another early Greek physician and medical expert. The oath of Hippocrates is very famous in the medical community. And this oath is basically the first medical ethics codified in early times. Okay, oath on the Greek gods and goddesses. which is shirk. According to Islam, it is haram, it is not permissible. However, the ethics mentioned in that oath are good. We'll come to that. So he says this is the method of the early Greek philosophers and the experts of medicine, including Jalinus, Galen, أفلاطون, Bucrat himself, Hippocrates. فيما استخرجه من الطب وأمر البدن وتبعه وسلك في طريقه. يعني later philosophers, they followed these early medical experts and philosophers, their knowledge about medicine and human body, and they incorporated it, they turned it into falsafa, because this was understanding the human condition, both physical and psychological, understanding the psychology of a human being, understanding the human body. They used it in falsafa. So Jalinus is important because the definition which we mentioned in the previous session of akhlaq, that akhlaq is something which flows naturally without the need of effort or rawiyah, tafakkur and rawiyah, without the need of deep thinking or effort. This definition is the definition of Jalinus. It is the definition of Galen, which he has mentioned here. The second chapter is about في معرفة أصول الأخلاق, understanding the principles of akhlaq, وشرح أحوال هذه الأصول, and explaining the conditions of these principles and the details. Okay, so he said فنقول إن جالينوس وصف الأخلاق فقال, defining akhlaq. He says Jalinus, Galen, he explained akhlaq and said إن الخلق حال النفس داعية الإنسان إلى أن يفعل أفعال النفس بلا روية ولا اختيار. You see, it is the condition of the psychological condition of a human being which encourages him, encourages a human being to do actions, to actualize particular actions بلا روية ولا اختيار, without deep thinking and effort. It flows naturally. We explained this. So this is from Galen. Now the question is, what has Galen to do with akhlaq? Galen is, and we know Galen as a physician, as a doctor. He has nothing to do with akhlaq. And this question will arise because of the confused and wrong understanding of knowledge in our times. Because of the theory of specialization which is dominant on our minds. We should be, he's a doctor, why is he defining akhlaq? He should be talking about diseases, sicknesses and medicine, so on and so forth. No, this was not the idea of knowledge before the modern Western age. So Galen is the first Greek philosopher to incorporate medicine and use it in explaining akhlaq. So from him we have the famous Hippocratic oath, from Bucrat. Bucrat is the first, and then we have Galen also. He followed the path of Bucrat. So in view of the speculations of the pre-Socratic philosophers of nature, we can say that Hippocrates, he lived from 460 to 375 before Christian era, BC. They advocated an empirical scientific ideal within medicine, corresponding to what Herodotus and Thucydides had championed in historical writing. The empirical and scientific method was championed by the early Greek philosophers and scientists and experts in medicine. Emphasis on observation and practical experience, not speculation. Hence, Hippocrates, Bucrat, is part of a factual, experientially based trend in antiquity. Today, Hippocrates is probably best known for his formulation of the medical code of ethics. Now again, if they were champions of factual, experience-based method, why are they entering into the moral realm? Because in morality, the modern West has adopted the theory of moral relativism. We will come to that. Morality is relative. There is no objective morality. The philosophers, the early Greek scholars, if they were champions of empirical scientific method, why to enter morality? To understand this, we must take into consideration, as I said, the early formulation of knowledge, meaning of knowledge, types of knowledge. Because mathematics was also part of philosophy. Mathematics, as we understand it now, for example, this is an example, it was not a pure empirical field. It was part of philosophy. So the oath, Hippocratic oath, Hippocrates is probably best known for his formulation of the medical code of ethics. I swear by Apollo, the physician, and the Greek gods and goddesses, that according to my ability and judgment, I will keep this oath and this stipulation to reckon him who taught me this art equally dear to me as my parents, to share my substance with him and relieve his necessities if required, to look upon his offspring in the same footing as my own brothers, and to teach them his art, and to teach them this art, if they shall wish to learn it without fee or stipulation. Imagine, without fee or stipulation, and that by precept, lecture, and every other mode of instruction. I will impart a knowledge of the art to my own sons and to those of my teachers and to disciples bound by a stipulation and oath according to the law of medicine, but to none others. I will follow that system of regimen which, according to my ability and judgment, I consider for the benefit of my patients, and abstain from whatever is mischievous. I will give no deadly medicine to anyone if asked, nor suggest any such counsel, so on and so forth. Yani this is the famous Hippocratic oath. This version of the Code of Medical Ethics has become a classic text, medical ethics. So the first formulation of ethics in antiquity. It displays a reflective, moral view of the relationship between doctor and patient and between doctor and society. Moreover, it displays that caution in medical practice that Hippocrates stood for. The doctor should not at once grasp the knife and operate. For Hippocrates, a doctor should primarily be a physician who prescribes medication rather than intervenes drastically. This is the opposite these days. Usually, doctors, they are in a rush to operate, to earn money. Behind this lies the view that a doctor should work with nature, not against it. You see the comprehensive understanding of medicine in those times. Harmony with nature, incorporating the ethics. The goal is to restore nature's balance and harmony by stimulating nature's own processes. If this seems far too passive for us today, it may be helpful to clarify 2 points. First, surgical procedures were more dangerous in antiquity than they are today, owing to factors such as antisepsis and technical equipment. Now we have advanced in this in the surgical procedures. Secondly, Hippocrates had a view of nature similar to that of Aristotle. Everything seeks its place, and human beings with both mind and a body seek health. That is to say, they seek regulation of natural functions and abilities and harmonious balance. In this process, the doctor can act as a counselor who advises on diet or lifestyle, as well as a physician, since it is the whole person that is to be made well, not one part of the body. Greek surgeons practiced in spite of that. This is the main idea of Hippocrates. However, they would practice dissection and even human vivisection on prisoners condemned to death, and thereby improved their anatomical and physiological knowledge. They were enabled to describe the inner organs in more detail and to uncover the functional relationship between organs. And they would practice, but on prisoners only. For example, that linking the eye, the optic nerve, and the central nervous system, for example. Such knowledge is necessary if we are not only to describe the progression of various illnesses and experiment with medicines in relation to the observation of external symptoms, but also to explain why things happen. After him, we have Galen, who lived in 130 to 200 AD. Was a follower of Hippocrates. He was a follower of Bocrat. and an Aristotelian. He too emphasized that natural things seek harmony and that the doctor is to assist cautiously in this process. Galen opposed the theory that material atoms are the basic elements of nature. Such a view misrepresents the processes of life according to Galen. Therefore, he rejected the concept of medical therapy based on the theories of nature proposed by Democritus and Epicurus. Galen eventually achieved considerable fame and remained an authority on medicine until the end of the Renaissance. And this idea of fluids in the body and reaching the state of balance is taken from him. In accordance with the views of his day, that the physical state of the body is governed by a balanced relationship among the various bodily fluids. He attempted to account theoretically for the various temperaments in terms of an imbalance in this relationship. So having too much blood or being phlegmatic, like the choleric has too much yellow bile, black bile, so on and so forth. And the imbalance which occurs in the bodily fluids is the main reason of disease. Here we meet the classical Greek ideas of balance and harmony, because balance and harmony was the main idea of the Greeks. So it is very interesting to see how Thabit ibn Sinan incorporated understanding of medicine according to his times, particularly the bodily fluids and other matters, in understanding akhlaq, in understanding ethics. Okay, so did we learn from others? Did we take from other civilizations, particularly the Greeks? Yes, we took. We took specifically in the worldly sciences. However, we did not engage in the method of copy-paste. We did not incorporate it as it was. And this is true with the translation movement, which was practiced in the times of Khalifa Ma'mun. Okay, so for example, when we talk about Ibn Sina and we say he took from Aristotle, but if you study his books, even Farabi, the early philosophers, and we have discussed about them in the early sessions of this Islamic worldview, you will realize that they did not take as we imagine, as we are imagining, that they just engaged in copy-paste. They basically incorporated the ideas and further developed it, nurtured it, rejected some ideas, enhanced some others. So this is how they paved the way for modern Western Renaissance also. So you can see it in this text, for example, as a specimen. And this is okay, this is fine. So there is difference between influence theory. Everything is influenced from others. Islamic law was taken from Romans. Theology, philosophy was taken from Greeks. Metaphysics was, this influence theory is usually pushed by the Western Orientalists, and it has affected the minds of many Muslim scholars. So there is difference between influence and learning from other civilizations. Civilization exchanges happen, and this is natural, particularly in the age of globalization. It will happen, we will be influenced. But the problem in our times of decline, is that we don't have great minds like Thabit ibn Sinan and others who know the art of incorporating the ideas of other civilizations while protecting our others. Creating this screen, or we may call it reverse osmosis, which happens with water also, taking the ideas of others, benefiting, and this is natural, not even taking, it will come to us, it is natural, but screening it, taking the best and leaving what is what does not fit into our own worldview. The early scholars, philosophers, legal experts, muhaddithun, ulama, they were best in understanding this matter. And this is what we have lost. In our times, we either fall into complete rejection, we turn a blind eye to this cultural and civilizational exchange, or we want to incorporate everything. Okay, and we fall into inferiority complex. We are in decline because we are not adopting Western values. We are not adopting the West as it is. Let us become Western and adopt, embrace it, not even embrace it, so that we will develop. This is one extreme. The other extreme is complete rejection. We don't want anything. Both these methods are wrong. We have to create a fine balance, golden mean. Again, he says, I have used medicine in understanding ethics and medicine in a deeper way, like I gave the example. The bodily fluids influence health and sickness of the body. These bodily fluids can also affect the akhlaq of a human being. Okay? This is completely different from what moral philosophy has culminated in, or what it has become in the time of Western modernity, or now we are in post-modernity. The moral philosophy and morality is not connected with the psychological and physical realities of a human being. There is discontent with understanding morality in this manner. Rather, the best moral philosophy does, Western moral philosophy in our times, is understanding the cultural practices, connecting it with culture, society, dominant norms. The maximum it reaches is understanding ethics based on belief system of a human being. But where does this belief system come? What influences this belief system? What is the difference between the quality of the different qualities of the nafs? Like we have the quality of intellect, rationality in the nafs, which helps us in understanding the rational realities. And then we have the quality of desire in the nafs, beastly qualities, the ghara'is, instincts. So the Western, modern Western moral philosophy does not go so far. And this is completely different from even the Western, early Western philosophers and philosophy in antiquity and the classical age. So he says, I have incorporated medicine because this was the practice of some early Western philosophers also. And this is not a bid'ah. وقد ذكر جالينوس في كتابه المعروف. Galen has mentioned in his book about Hippocrates and Plato, إن مثل ذلك بعينه فعل أفلاطون. It is the same method which was adopted and applied by Plato in his philosophy. يعني he understood the nafs and then تفلسف فيه and created a philosophy out of it. And it is the author, it is the influence of Hippocrates, who extracted from medicine and from the physical conditions of a human being the moral philosophy. Then he goes into the definition of akhlaq. Here in definition and other matters, there are some Western scholars who again apply influence theory here. And this has deluded some Muslim modernist scholars also, wrongly, and affected them wrongly. The claim that Islam does not have any moral philosophy because we don't have works. Other fields are very rich: hadith, fiqh, law, theology, the ulum which are connected with understanding the scriptures, hadith, fiqh, usul, fiqh, Arabic, language, very rich. But we don't have works about moral philosophy. We have some scholars here and there who directly wrote and compiled works about this field. So Islam does not have any moral philosophy. And those who have compiled books and written about this, they have taken it from the Greeks. And the best example they give is the definition of Galen. They say if you study any book of moral philosophy, akhlaq, in Islam, you will see they mention the same definition, the definition which has been mentioned here. And this is true. This is not wrong. This is true. There are texts by the later scholars of Ilm al-Kalam who compiled, which were compiled about akhlaq, teaching akhlaq. Like we have the text in Ilm al-Akhlaq by al-Imam al-Iji. Al-Imam al-Iji lived in, I think, 7th or 8th century after Hijrah. And I have it here. For example, we have two texts here. We have Risalat al-Akhlaq of al-Imam al-Iji. Al-Imam al-Iji, he died in 756 after Hijrah. And a great Turkish scholar has written a commentary on it, explained it. Al-Allama Tash Kubrizada, famous great scholar. He died in 968 after Hijrah. Risalat al-Akhlaq, you can download it, is a concise text in akhlaq. We have another commentary. We have another commentary on Risalat al-Akhlaq by Shamsuddin al-Kirmani. Shamsuddin al-Kirmani is another great scholar. His commentary on Sahih al-Bukhari is very famous. Sharh al-Kirmani ala Sahih al-Bukhari. Risalat al-Akhlaq, you can see it, by al-Imam al-Iji. He died in 756 after Hijrah. And the commentary is by Shamsuddin al-Kirmani. He died in 786. Another commentary on this text. If you read this text, you will find same definitions. The structure has been taken from Aristotle. Okay? Now, we should not be ashamed of this. What is the problem? We can learn from any civilization. It is not a problem as long as we incorporate it and explain it according to our own worldview. It does not contradict our worldview. This is not our problem, wallahi. We can learn. We are ready to learn. Islamic civilization is an open civilization with dawabit, of course, with rules, with conditions. For this reason, you will see in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has from the basic principles of Quran or the basic themes of Quran is the stories of the previous nations, great civilizations of the past, including the deviant people, including the disbelievers. They have been mentioned in the Quran. The nation of Ad, Thamud, people of Aika and others, so that we can learn. We can learn from their stories. For example, in law, we have this evidence which is used as a legal instrument in extracting law. Shar'u man qablana, the laws of the previous nations. It is a disagreed upon evidence, of course. How can we use it is a different topic. In usul al-fiqh, this is a basic evidence. Shar'u man qablana. So shar'u man qablana also means that we can learn. We are open to different civilizations. It is not a problem. In fact, I have read that some scholars who have compiled works about explaining knowledge and the contribution of mankind, human beings, civilizations in nurturing knowledge, fields of knowledge, classification of knowledge, like the great book Abjadul Ulum of Nawab Siddiq Hasan Khan al-Bhopali, a great scholar of subcontinent. In that, he has taken it from early sources. He says that the Greek philosophers, early Greek philosophers of the antiquity, Western antiquity and classical age, they took their knowledge. He says this about logic, the ilm of mantiq in particular. He says it has been said that they took it from Luqman al-Hakim, because Luqman was also a philosopher. In the Quran, we have Surah Luqman, right? But was he a prophet or not? This is a debatable matter. But he is famous for hikmah. Hikmah is philosophy. He is famous for wisdom. And in the original sources, the words of hikmah from Luqman have been quoted everywhere. That's why Luqman al-Hakim, the philosopher, Luqman, the wise. And Hakim and hikmah is another term for philosophy, mentioned in this text also. by Thabit ibn Sinan, rahimahullah. So he says, Nawab Siddiq Hasan Khan al-Bhupali, in his book, he says that logic, principles of logic, because they are the principles of common sense, basic rationality. They took it from Luqman. And who knows, this is the claim, who knows that the knowledge of these Greek scholars, its source is also prophetic. And they took much from the prophets of their times. Prophets came to all nations. We don't know, right? So we can learn. It's not a problem. Okay. So there are, however, we have to be cautious and careful in accepting the influence theory. As I said, there is difference between influence and learning. And also creating, we must have scholars who create this screen and the process of accepting and rejecting at the same time. Okay, and they must be masters in, they must have encyclopedic knowledge. If you don't know anything about medicine or a particular field, how can you accept or reject? How can you engage in the methodology of naqd, critique? You cannot. You must be an expert in your own field, in your own worldview, Islam, and the field you are critiquing. Okay. I think we'll stop here. Inshallah, in the next, we will use this as a text, and inshallah, I will also take some fawaid, benefits from the book of Ibn Miskawayh as two examples. We just want to introduce ourselves to the Turath we have. And in every field, we have a very rich legacy, but we can take few examples. We cannot prolong a particular component more than it deserves. So taking few examples, understanding how they used to think, how they used to apply their knowledge, so that we can learn and we can uplift ourselves in our times. We said we are concerned with meta-ethics, philosophy of morality, moral philosophy. There are different theories proposed in the West, or they are meta-ethical doctrines. One of the main meta-ethical doctrine is moral relativism. Moral relativism. Inshallah, we'll talk about this in the next session. And as I have said, our purpose is not to understand the West. It is a different engagement. The Western legacy is also very rich. What it has reached is a different matter. The culmination is a different reality, but the past, the contribution is rich. We should acknowledge it. It requires a specific and a separate engagement. But for the ease of understanding, sometimes we engage in comparisons. Okay, so we'll take this one example. There are many multiple meta-ethical doctrines, theories, but we will take one example, moral relativism, as an example or a meta-ethical doctrine, and try to understand it and compare it with our own ideas in morality in the light of this text, in the light of the text Tahdhi al-Akhla, compiled by the great physician and scholar, alim, philosopher, al-Imam Thabit ibn Sinan al-Tabib, rahimahullahu ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us understanding. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from knowledge which does not benefit. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us best of dunya and akhirah. Inshallah, here we have Ramadan from Monday, tomorrow. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the best of this month. Help us, give us tawfiq of worshipping Him in the best way, benefiting from this month by prayer, dua, dhikr, taraweeh, tilawah of the Quran, charity, jihad. Alhamdulillah, we have jihad. Jihad is the best ibadah in the month of Ramadan. Wallahi, I wish we would be allowed to join our brothers in Palestine and fight along their side against the Zionists, but difficult to reach there. So jihad is one of the best ibadat. Those who are engaged in it, we should make dua for them. We should support them according to our capabilities. If we don't have anything, just lift your hands. Remember, your brothers and sisters, show your affiliation and loyalty with the ummah, but by at least making dua, lifting your hands for. Now we have this calamity at hand, Palestine. Otherwise, we have a lot of disturbances happening in the Muslim world. Have a look at Sudan. We have Kashmir. We have the Uyghur brothers. We have different places. Some of them, when a new thing happens, we forget other places. Make dua, always. Dua of nusra, dua of help, dua of success. This is the least we can do. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and give us good health, both physical and spiritual, mend our akhlaq, make us people of great akhlaq who can become the beacons of light and enlightenment for people by their akhlaq, by action. So that when people see us, they say, this is a Muslim, this is Muslim. I want to become like him. So da'wah was never, for Sahaba, da'wah was not like we do it in our times. We are forced to reach people, go out on the street, online. So the Sahaba, their da'wah was a different style. They would enter a place and establish the nizam of justice, show great akhlaq, not only establishing the criminal law. This is a reductionist understanding of implementation of Islam. Not only chopping hands and killing people, which is part of Islam, no doubt. Criminal law is also part of Islam, but establishing justice, values, greatness. So people would see them, these noble beings who are at the service of mankind, without any greed. They don't want anything for themselves. They're at the service. And they are the most noble people, people of sacrifice. When the disbelievers would see them and their behavior, their values, their justice, they are epitomes of of what they claim, they would be attracted to this behavior. And they would say, please tell us. They would come to them and ask them, please tell us, how can we become like you? This was the greatness of the Sahaba. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us akhlaq like the Sahaba, make us people of action, not only people of words. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His beautiful names and exalted attributes to accept our amal in this blessed month of Ramadan, forgive our sins, elevate the ranks of our deceased. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant nusra to the people of Palestine, people of Gaza, and all occupied territories. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free all occupied territories. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant nusra to those who are aiding and supporting the cause of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and make us from them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroy those who aim to destroy the cause of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and protect us from them. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Sallallahu ta'ala ala nabi al-ummi. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.